It's a busy week in the garden this week. We got a lot to do this week. We've got a lot of potatoes to plant. They probably should have went out last week, but we did get a day or two of really cold temps, and I think we're beyond that right now. But we got to get the potatoes into the ground. It's time. Not only into the ground, into the bucket. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I plant my potatoes in buckets and also in the garden. Planting potatoes in the buckets starts with last year's bucket. Doesn't always have to. I often leave the buckets in there. Dog burying a bone in there. I let them over winter. I'll put grass clippings and leaf clippings on top, let them break down in the bucket. And there's a ton of worms in here. I can see that, baby worms. You got baby worms all over. So that's good to see in the buckets. So I start by clearing off all the old debris that I had in there, and I dump out the bucket. Now you could just reuse this, and as you can see, we still have the roots from the old plant in there. But there's really not enough soil, and I like to recharge the ground. I add another bucket of peat moss in. Gotta hurry though, because I'm dealing with a windstorm here today, and don't want the peat moss to blow all over the place. So it's all by volume, not weight. And that's doing nothing. So I also add in a bucket of new chicken compost. So this basically triples the volume that we have, so I can get 2 or 3 buckets out of this. And I try to mix it all in then. And I go through and pull out any big pieces. I don't bother sifting any of this, but I just try to pull out the big pieces, break up any clumps, and incorporate it all in. Normally I wouldn't do it at this point, but only because it's so windy. I'm just going to water down I don't want this sopping wet, but I also don't want it blowing all over the place. So like I said, I'm just incorporating some water in it to keep it from blowing. So now what I'm going to add to the mix is some blood meal. That's nitrogen. And I put a good dose, basically covering the entire thing. Again, because it is so windy, I'm going to mix it up sooner than I otherwise would. I'm adding in right now bone meal, which seems it's got 7% nitrogen, 7% phosphate in it. Normally, it's got more phosphate than nitrogen in here, but the nitrogen will give a good boost over time to the plants, and it's the plants themselves that help produce the potatoes. So right now I'm just mixing it in. The next amendment I'm going to put in is potassium sulfate. Potassium is good for roots. You don't need a whole lot of potassium, but I add some in. But I like to put it in. I'm going to be adding some Epsom salts. Epsom salts, don't need a lot of that either, but that adds magnesium to the mix. And also some borax. That puts boron into the soil as well. could add some garden lime if you want. I would normally, but I don't have any, so I'm not going to add it this time. And now I'm going to add a mix of balanced fertilizer. It's a 10-10-10. You can use organic, you can use traditional. Either way, as I said, I'm not religious about the organic aspect of it. I try to as much as possible, but if I can't get or I don't have the organic fertilizers, I'll add inorganic to the mix. And this will give the plants an immediate access to the nutrients that they need. The organic, the blood meal and the bone meal and the phosphorus, they take about 3-4 months to break down into a form that the potatoes will be able to use. The 10-10-10 fertilizer, gives them an immediate availability of that. All right, that should be well mixed. So let's start planting some potatoes. So I've got my bucket. This is probably a 4-gallon bucket, and I've drilled holes in the bottom. They might seem like large holes, but you don't have to worry, the dirt's not going to fall through. And I'm going to put about 2 inches of soil, 1 shovelful, in the bottom. First potatoes I'm going to plant are my White Superior. As you can see, the potatoes are doing pretty nicely. These are nice plants that you want to plant in the ground. So we just take the cup, turn it upside down. Look at that root system. That's a fantastic root system on that potato. This potato's got a great head start on any that you've just take the seed potato and throw it in the ground. So you've got a good healthy plant, a super healthy root system, and you take that plant, and if you want to do 1 plant per bucket, you just stick it in the center of the bucket there. And then what you do is you just cover it up carefully. You don't want to break the plant, but you cover that plant up to about 1 inch or 2 below the top. Hilling a potato is to protect the potatoes themselves when they sprout so that they don't turn green. If you just take a regular plant, plant it in as you would a regular vegetable, the potatoes will end up pushing up through the ground. So you end up hilling up over the potato to allow, to protect the potatoes that'll form. This is essentially hilling the potato. You're not going to harm the potato plant by burying it. It'll end up growing up through the soil and it'll sprout up over the top. The thing about potatoes is they produce the potatoes right where that potato is. So we planted the potato here. It's right around in here in the, oh, here, how about if I put it in the screen? We planted the potato right about here in the cup. So that's where the potatoes are basically going to form, right in this area. So by putting them down about 2 inches or so above the bottom of the plant, that's where the potatoes are going to form. You're not going to have to worry about the potatoes themselves growing up over the top of the soil area here. But what we're doing is we're going to be planting 2 potatoes in every bucket. So I'm actually going to shift the potato a little bit to the back here to this corner, and then I'm going to start covering it up. And again, you want to be careful. You want to protect the plant so that it doesn't get damaged. So right now our potato isn't covered yet, but we've added a whole bunch more soil that's starting to cover the plant now. And now what we're going to do is take our second potato plant. It's another White Superior. I mean, you can mix and match if you want. I just want to know what's in each bucket. And this one also has a terrific root system. And it's going to start putting out potatoes as well, probably right around where those are forming. But now we're going to take this, and this is going to be buried in the thing now, slightly different higher levels. So the potatoes it's growing are going to be higher up and won't crowd out the potatoes that the first plant did. So now we're going to carefully cover the first one. And start covering the second one. So this plant will be up above the ground. The other plant, as you can see, is now completely buried. And I'm just going to shake this, help it settle down a little bit. So what I'm going to do now is add some more bone meal on top and more blood meal. That now will work its way down through the soil. As I water the plant over time, the nutrients will seep down through. And now I cover the top 2-inch layer of the plant with straw. This holds in the moisture, so you don't have to water as much. And you want to give them a good drink. By wetting it down, it also holds down the straw too. So now let's do another one. So in this one, I'm going to be planting the Charpo Mira. To be honest, I can't remember if there's more than one potato in here. It's certainly looking like there's more than one potato in here. But I'm going to plant this whole thing by itself in the bucket. So it'll be 1, maybe 2 potatoes. We'll see as I pull it out. I'm not going to separate it though. I'm just going to plant this as a single unit right into this bucket here. So again, we take our shovel full of soil, which gives us 2 to 3 inches on the bottom. And now we'll take our plants out. You can see the roots are growing out of the bottom here. So we got a really healthy root system. You can see starting to encircle the plant, so it's a good thing we're getting them in the ground. They probably should have gone into the buckets last week. And like I said, that's why I try to do it for around St. Patrick's Day. That's like the traditional period when you would plant a potato. Let me just show you a trick. If you're concerned that you might break the potato plant by putting in the dirt and breaking the plant off, take a 2-liter bottle of soda, cut the bottom off, and then you place it directly over the plant like this. And now you can take the soil and just put it in around the bottle. Like that, and then pull that out. The plant's protected, and you can shake it down, and you've protected your plant. We'll take our blood meal, our bone meal, and now we'll add the hay. This is shredded hay that you can get at home supply centers. I get mine at Lowe's. And now we give them a good water. We'll label it again until I can get a proper label. But the Sharp O'Meara's in the bucket. So now let's move over to the garden where we're going to plant our russet potatoes. So I won't be planting all the potatoes in the buckets today. I'm going to spread that out over the course of the week because it's a lot of work. Some of the plants got a little beat up because of the sub-freezing temperatures that we had. So I'm going to give them a little time to grow back. And I'll be keeping an eye on these potatoes that we just planted and keeping them well watered. You don't want them sopping wet because that'll rot the potato, but you need to keep them moist. So probably at the outset, maybe once a week, I'll give them a good drenching, maybe a gallon of water per bucket. It's a lot of water. And then as the summer comes along, because you need that water to go down through the entire bucket. And then as the summer progresses and the temperatures warm up, and if it dries out, then give them a little bit more water during the week. But you got to keep an eye on them and make sure that they remain well watered. Unlike potatoes in the ground, potatoes in buckets need more water because the buckets will dry out faster. So let's get to planting in the garden. So to start off, I've cleared out the row where I'm going to plant potatoes. There's actually going to be a double row. It's marked 3 inches in from the edge all the way down, and then I'll go over 6 or 7 inches to the right of that and make another planting in that row. What I'm going to be doing is spacing them out 7 or 8 inches on 6 or 7 inches on center to plant them down the row. So I'm going to start off 4 inches in from the edge. So I've got a tape measure laid out, and I'm going to dig down deep to plant this potato in the ground. And just like with the buckets, doing this will take the place of hilling the potatoes, because in a raised bed garden, it's not going to be so easy to do the hilling. And I think this will work just as well. So we need to add our soil amendments, just as we did with the buckets. Just going to be a lot less than what we used. I'll be putting in the blood meal, bone meal, potassium sulfate, as well as the boron and magnesium. So I'm just going to then just mix up the bottom of the soil so it's not sitting right on top of those things, and then add my plant right on top of it. And now push the soil in back around it, and there we go. We've got one potato in. So now I'm going to move about 7 inches down. So that'll be here. And do the same thing. Dig out a nice hole. Put in our amendments. And then mix up the bottom. And I'll continue down the line, and we'll be back at the end. And so we've got the first row in, all the way up to the end. They're planted every 7 inches on center. And I've got the second row marked out, 7 inches over from this row. And I'll be planting them in between these plants, so like there or there. But that way they won't be too crowded upon one another. It's amazing how bad I am planting in rows, even with guidelines, in straight rows, even with guidelines. But got the 2 rows in, and now what I'm going to do is take the 10-10-10 fertilizer and put it right down in between the two rows of potatoes, and then I'll water them in. So now you can see the delineation between the two rows. And now, like I said, I'll come in and I'll water in between them to really soak in that fertilizer. So the potatoes have been fertilized and watered now. And now we just get to sit back and watch them grow. That's how we're planting our potatoes this year, in buckets and in the ground. And we'll follow along in their progress in the weeks and months to come. If you'd like to see what we were doing in our garden last week, check out this video right here. And then subscribe and hit that notification bell. And that way you'll be able to follow along on the progress on all of our vegetables as we try to grow a supermarket in our own backyard. Okay, thanks for watching.